All right, guys, today we have a great, amazing, hilarious, funny guy. Now, I know I say that all the time, and that's just who I am because I love comedy. I'm a comedy nerd. And I hope that these videos help you guys out on your comedy career. That's the whole point of me interviewing people. Yes, I get to interview them. Yes, I get to talk to them, and it's so much fun. But I'm hoping that it helps you. So do me a favor and put a comment below and tell me what thing in your comedy career is holding you back. What's the thing stopping you from progressing? What do you need to know to move forward? What's that one question, that one thing that's stopping your growth? So I can help you, right? I can find somebody. If I can't do it, I can ask somebody who's done it and get that information passed on to you. Please also like, subscribe, click the bell, all that stuff so that I can make sure that I can help you turn your funny into money. So let's get to the interview with Michael Palascak, all right? Here we go. Here we go.
Cool.
All right, everybody, thank you for coming back to the Comedypreneur Show. I'm James Creviston. Today we have an amazingly funny, hilarious guy. He's one of my favorite people. He does just the one thing. Just the one thing is all that he does. That's actually a favorite bit around my house, just the one thing. And, so please give it up for the very hilarious Michael Palascak of Last Comic Standing. That's probably where most of you guys know him from. Michael, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
How many people come up to you and ask you about that joke or use that line to you? Is that pretty often?
I don't know. I appreciate you doing it though. It makes me feel good. So
I love it. Actually, anytime my kids get in trouble, sometimes one of my daughters will be like, "I just did the one thing," and I was like,
That's great.
How do you now?
I want to. Yeah, if you quote a comedian, you have to let them out of it after your dad.
Yeah, exactly right.
Good job. Unless it's like Richard Pryor or something, like you shouldn't say that.
Actually, yeah, you're right. If my kids were older and they did the Richard Pryor jokes, they'd probably be like, all right, you're out.
Okay, yeah.
But I love Richard Pryor stuff. So
one of my friends told me when he was in college, he used to do Dane Cook jokes for his theater class, like that as a performance or whatever. Like his teacher would like let him do them to like as a break or whatever, and he like emailed Dane Cook that story and told him, he's like, "Hey, I do your stuff in class because I love you and I want to, be like you." And he got a letter from Dane Cook's lawyer that says cease and desist.
That is terrible. So if someone repeats my jokes back to me, actually, I knew that I was actually funny when a kid, like 3 months later after a show I had done, came up to me and repeated a joke to me. So then I was like, "Oh, this is amazing. I'm in. I made it."
And Dane Cook's defense, he might have just been being really funny. Like that could just be a really funny thing to do.
So can you kind of tell everybody your comedy history career, like how you got started and what you've kind of gone through? Because most people will probably know you from Last Comic Standing. It's probably the biggest thing where like you've had most people would know you, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I started out in Chicago. My parents moved there when I was like 18, and I didn't know anybody when I was home from college in the summers, and so I just started going to open mics because I wanted to do stand-up, and it was great. It was a really good community in the suburbs of comedians that were like already like hosting and starting to feature at clubs, and I got to learn from them. And then when I finished college, I just moved back home and lived there and did stand-up in Chicago for a while, and then moved to LA a couple of years, and after that.
And what was the process of you going from starting stand-up and then what made you want to move from Chicago to LA? Like, what was that? How did you know you were ready for it?
Yeah, I never had like a feeling of like, oh, I want to move to a specific city. I felt like doing clubs in the Midwest was great, and I started to do colleges and make a living. So, but I got a manager after doing a couple festivals, and he was in LA, and I was going on auditions. I was going on tape for stuff, and he was just like, "You should just come out here for a month." So I did that, and then just stayed.
And then what was that like doing festivals and like ending up on Last Comic Standing? Like, what's that like to do competitions and festivals? I mean, it must be nerve-wracking because when you get up on stage, it's just like, oh, you're performing for everybody. But now there's this added pressure of this could make or break me.
about 3 years after being out of college. So then I first started having success in contests and like good ones. And I think like my main theory was, I think the benefit of being a young comedian and going into those festivals is like you're used to doing a lot of open mics and showcases. So you just are able to work out getting those jokes and hosting at clubs. So you're able to see like, okay, these are the jokes that work when I'm hosting at a bad show. So it's like, these are the jokes that if you're doing a good show or if you put them back to back, you can really kill. And so I just really tried to put as much into like that 3 to 5 to 7 minutes that I possibly could. And I did the comedy club in Chicago had a festival that I won, and then our contest that I won in the summer was a Taste of Chicago. It was like an outside comedy show, but it was in a tent, and the people were really good. And I remember there was like shows every hour, and I like advanced on a Thursday or something in the morning, and I just asked the booker if I could just do sets all day, because they didn't have enough comedians to compete at every show, and just sort of not move on just because I already moved on. And he was like, oh yeah, and I really got to learn. I felt more comfortable on that stage. I got to learn like how it worked, and I think that helped me in that contest. And then because I won that one, I got to do one for the comedy festival in Las Vegas, and it was a similar thing where I did like the set that I thought would do really well, but also there was a little bit of luck. My mom has a lot of family in Chicago, and 2 weeks before that show, there was like a wedding and a funeral, and everybody was like, we want to do a show. So like probably like 15 of my family were at this contest in Zany's in Chicago, and it only holds like 140 people. And so I looked really good. And I was the only, that was a different one. So no, that was the same one. So I was at this, I was the only one that worked. Zany's a good amount. It was me and Hannibal. And so the guy that was running the light just didn't light me also, because he was just like, oh, Michael's doing this. I just kept going. I mean, I stopped at like 12 minutes or whatever, but it's definitely like a home field advantage type thing. And then so that was actually the Comedy Central one. And then the Las Vegas one was also in Chicago, and I sort of won those. And after those three, that's when I got representation and a comedy college agent. And it wasn't until 6 or 7 years after that Last Comic Standing came around. But that was like the first intro to contests. And I think that was my goal, just to make as much comedy happen in those first couple minutes, or like just slam it all together. And it was fun. And you can't really control a lot of it, because sometimes like I got lucky that it was at a club that I knew, or I got to do shows there all day, but you can control some of it. And I've always just tried to control everything I could control.
And what would you say that comedians could try to control or should try to control? So it sounded like the crowd, but then you also said, oh, I'll just stay and stand up all day. And so then
yeah. So having family there is obviously going to do it helpful. But I never like tried to do that, but it just worked out. And I think that was a bonus, because sometimes I think the thing that you can't control is your jokes. So if like you're getting ready to go to a festival or contest, just running that set a ton and whatever your plan is, because sometimes you have multiple rounds. And I think and just being really honest with yourself of like, this is what works, and believing in yourself. I remember one time I did a contest. I did Laughing Skull, I think the first year. And there were a couple rounds, and the first couple rounds, you didn't have to win every round, but I happened to get the first couple rounds. And then in the last round, I was talking to someone who wasn't a judge, but he was like a booker who was just there. And he was like, it's always good to open with your or close with your strongest joke. And I was always opening with my strongest joke, because I just felt like it's a contest. Everyone feels how you're doing from the second step on stage. And so I just want to open really strong and then hopefully do okay. And that was pretty much my theory. Like, I just want to kill as much as I can at the beginning, and then throw in all the stuff that I think is really funny or are like more original. And someone will hear that and be like, oh, he's a good comedian too. This isn't just the crowd that for some reason likes them. And it was always easier to do those jokes after everybody was on board, because I felt more comfortable and so did they. And so that was always my theory. And then also in that contest, so in the finals, I like switched it up and did like my favorite joke last, and it just like I didn't do well, and I was like, oh, I should probably, even if he was right, I probably shouldn't have changed unless I really believed it. So yeah,
My theory is always open with your best joke and close with your second best joke.
yeah.
Everything else in between, be whatever.
Yeah, I would even maybe go as far in like a contest, especially in the first round, open with your best joke, do your second best joke second, and just close on a joke that you know hits and maybe has like 2 punchlines in a row. That builds a little bit. Because if you have everybody by that point, it's going to look really good regardless. So that was my first intro to like contests, and it went well and it was fun. And then Last Comic Standing came around when they started going to 100 comedians. So I never really got to do the thing. I stood out in the rain or whatever and tried to audition, and it didn't work out. But I got to do the thing where you go audition in front of just the producer. You can come to the show. And the first year, I was like an alternate, and I ended up getting to do it. But I did the first episode, and I didn't move on at all. Russell Peters told me that like I didn't sound like who I am on stage in real life, and I think part of the reason was in those shows I was like, I'm gonna do my earliest stuff first, and the second round I'll do like second, and then I'll like the third round I'll just have. I just wanted to open with my oldest stuff because that's what I thought would be good, and that made me feel like, oh, that wasn't a good idea because I'm not that same person. So even though I disagreed with Russell, I thought I was funny and should have moved on. So then the next year, so that whole season happened. It was Rodman's year, and I went to the rap party because everybody got invited, which I was recommend doing because I ran into the executive producer, Paige, and I was just like, oh, thanks for having me or whatever. And I could tell that she felt like bad that they didn't use me at all in the show, because not only did I didn't make it, they didn't even use my stuff on the show, and I was completely fine with it. I just felt like when it happens, it happens, and I had been lucky enough to be on TV before that, so it wasn't like this is my only credit that I needed. But she was like, we'll use you next year, we'll definitely use you next year, just do it next year. And I was like, oh, that's great. So I got to audition again for the next year, and it was at like the Improv in Hollywood, I think on a Wednesday or Thursday night at like 10:30 p.m., like horrible time. And like, I don't know, for some reason I had these jokes that I thought were really good, but they didn't necessarily hit with the Thursday at 10:30 crowd at all. And then like sometimes that room was tight. So I just did my set, and she was there. I don't know if she saw it. They're taping it, and I never heard anything. It was like, that was like September. And then people started getting callbacks and all of a sudden I never heard anything. And I didn't really worry about it because I believed her. I thought that they were going to use me, and it wasn't a big deal. And it got to be like February. It was like March. Dave Landau was going to feature on the Sunday because he had never worked at club before. Dave Landau is very funny, but he wanted to get in the club, so he was going to feature. And I was just talking to him before the show, and I asked him about Last Comic Standing if it was happening again, and he was like, oh yeah, I think it's happening like next week. And I was like, oh, okay. And he went on before me, just destroyed, and I couldn't follow him. And but then like that night or the next day, I emailed the assistant to the producer and was like, hey, Paige told me I could do the show, and I haven't heard anything. And I just was wondering when I should be there or whatever. Like, here's luckily I'd done like Conan that year, so I just like sent them a thing. And they're like, oh yeah, we had something fall out. You can do Friday. And that happened to be like, some people found out they were doing the show in December, and they were working out their sets for months. And I just found out a couple days before. And so I think it worked to my advantage because I wasn't able to overthink it. So I was just like, these are the sets I have. And it was 3 minutes. And I knew from what they told me before, and the kind of like a theory that I had was like, instead of opening with my strongest joke, I'm going to open with like my strongest, newest joke. Like not like new, like that week or that month, but maybe that year or two. So it was like a judge couldn't see me and be like, hey, you're not being yourself. You sound like a character. Because it was like, this is something that I was doing. And then I could go into older jokes because then I already was talking in this new voice. That was who I was. And I did that, and it went really well in the first round. But since I didn't know I was doing it, I already had booked work on the road. So I like flew and did the show on Friday, and I had a show Thursday night, and I remember I had to get there for the award, like the rules meeting at like 10 a.m. in Burbank. And I'd done it the year before, so I just thought if I was late, it wasn't a big deal. But I was texting the producer, like the lady that was setting it up the night before, and she's like, "Oh yeah, if you're not here for that, you can't do it. It's against the law for you to be here if you don't go to this rules thing." So I like bought a flight that night that got into Burbank at like 9 rather than LAX at like 9:30, and like just got my stuff and flew to LA, and then flew back that night, or Saturday morning. I took Friday off and did the show, and then I moved on. So I did the shows in Chicago Saturday and Sunday, and then flew back to LA Monday for the show, the second round, and then did the second round and third round, and then we all got to break, and then came back and did the end the next week.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
So if a comedian's building a set to try to get noticed for things like that, what would be, like, if you were going to do that process again? Say someone told you, "Hey, Michael, we're going to put you on the biggest show in the world. This is your big shot." What would you recommend to set that up to kind of prepare yourself? I mean, I know we did talk about your best joke, maybe your second best joke, but how would you kind of build that set?
Well, I always felt too, more important even than your best joke is your joke that only, like, not only you could tell, but that really told people about you. Like, I've always been pretty much talking about my life, so it's kind of easy to find, like, oh, this is a joke about living with my parents, this is a joke about having a girlfriend or whatever, whereas like people see you as a person and they kind of get to know you a little bit. And I always thought that was kind of important and showed like your original perspective. I always felt like I was lucky in the sense that I didn't feel like someone would see me and be like, "Oh, we've seen this before a ton of times," or whatever, just for whatever reason. So I wasn't super worried about it. I just wanted to pick the joke that worked a lot, and that was about me. So I always felt like if you can open with stuff that's really funny and also about yourself, then that could be really good.
And when you say about yourself, are you saying like looks or like just like something generalized? Like,
I never open with anything about my looks, but just about like what's going on in your life or something like biographical about you, or about, like, I had a joke about going to my girlfriend's ex-boyfriend's wedding. I'm open with one of those jokes. I opened with one of the years I opened with I don't remember. Maybe, yeah. So just stuff that's like personal that only you could tell.
Right.
Yeah.
My opening joke, I think we met at the Clean Comedy Challenge in Pasadena.
Yeah.
Sorry. So my opening joke was about dating my wife and how she's smart and beautiful, but she's like partially blind and a little slow. And like, judges did not like that joke. They thought like people hated me right off the bat, like I was making fun of handicapped people. But it was just like this really funny bit where my wife literally is blind, like she has to wear glasses for everything. She's the smartest person I know, but she's just always like kind of off in whatever.
Yeah.
And they hated it. They hated that joke so bad. Like 3 different judges were like, "People hate you for that joke." And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, this is my life, real. Like, I'm not.
Yeah, that's not fair. I guess it is like, that's a good warning to know if you're doing jokes about yourself. Other people might have a different perspective on it than you do. So just to be aware of that. Because you are making fun of a disabled person, James. That's something that you're doing to open up your set.
So that is one off-putting thing. I changed that joke. I don't open with that joke anymore. Actually, I don't know if I haven't done that joke in about a year now.
What's good about that joke, though, I feel like it's a very original experience, and if you're worried about them having that thing, you can just change the wording of it or put it later, so people know that you're not hating on disabled people as a career.
Yeah. And what's funny is that joke in a club kills like right away, because it lets you know that I'm an idiot. Like, I have to date down and I'm not really a cool guy or whatever, and like just that kind of thing. And but I still am grateful that anyone would date me. So it's like that kind of whole contest, and people love that. But then when I did that competition, people were like, "Ooh, how dare you?" And I was like, "Really?" Like,
well, also I think sometimes it depends on judges. I feel like the judges of that contest are more traditional, like stand-up judges, whereas like sometimes you might not find that. So yeah.
And what do you think should I just saw this the other day in a special. Someone opened with a joke, and then at the very last joke they did was a callback. Like,
yeah.
joke. Do you like that style, or is that not something that you recommend?
Oh, I do like it. I remember when I did Last Comic and Moved On, my first set, it was only supposed to be 3.5 minutes. And I had my second joke, I had a closing line that called back my first or second joke. And I heard that the judges criticized another comedian did that because they're like, it's only 3.5 minutes. You don't have to call anything back. And I had like, I've heard a late night producer be like, this isn't a poem. You don't have to bring it all together or whatever. But I don't know. I think like, I was watching a special recently, and there was a bunch of callbacks throughout the set to the point where it felt like I don't want to say too easy, but like it seemed like I wasn't learning as much about the person because they were just having all of these callbacks, which were great, but it just seemed sort of mathematic versus like something that was supposed to be more real and flowing or whatever. So I think you can do too many or ones that aren't as, surprising. But I think if you can close on a really strong joke that has a callback, that's the thing too. I feel like if you have a joke that's really funny on its own, then you don't have the callback, then that's a good sign, because then you can add the callback and it makes it a really good joke. But if you just have a joke that all it is the callback, and you can still use it as a closer in a contest or whatever, and it might be perfect. But I think like maybe you just make sure try it out to make sure it just works still, and it's not just like we're trying to force in a callback, because you still want to have the best jokes in there.
Gotcha. And what is your writing process, or what is your process with coming up with new material? I mean, you're on the road a lot, so you probably work material in between your set, like new jokes.
Yeah.
But what's your process of getting new material?
Yeah. One of my friends, Tommy Johnigan, is really funny. And when he was in Chicago, he used to do a lot of free writing, and that always inspired me to like free write more. We just sort of write whatever. You sit down and make sure you write for like an hour just in a notebook. And like I've heard of like Stephen King, like it's a known thing to free write. But I just started doing that pretty regularly. I do it less now, probably like once or twice a week. But I just fill up a notebook, and then at the end, when the notebook's full, I go back and read it, and I try to find premises, and then I just try those out on stage. And there's a little bit of like, at some point, I'm forcing myself to try stuff out. Like if I'm doing a week at a club, I'll like, okay, I have to do a new joke this week that I'm going to work on all week, or I have to do like a new kind of joke every day and just try to get something out of it. And I think sometimes it's not good because it's not funny. But I think in a headlining set, Tommy also gave me that advice. Like if you can open with something new, because they give you're doing 45 minutes necessarily, but you're the last person. So I feel like if you bomb your first 2 or 3 minutes and then go into like your killer set, they're going to forgive you right away, and it could work even to your advantage. So I just try to put it in there. Also, like I have a son now, like I said, you might hear him in the background. He doesn't want to take a nap. And when he was really little, and even now I didn't have time to like sit down and free write or do the whole process. So I found that I could just tell him my jokes when I was up with him, and just talk them out, just do them over and over and over again to him for hours and hours and hours, and find new lines to the joke. And then when he wasn't like, I could go and write them down once I set them down. And so I started doing that. Like when I was driving, I would just do my jokes. And then if I would thought of a new part of a joke, I would just try to remember that joke until I got to where I was going, and then write it down, and just sort of actively write a lot more often. And so I think that was helpful. And then like sometimes Facebook and Twitter, I would have a line that I put out there, and then try to turn that into a joke. I think the biggest thing that I've learned from teachers and just stand-up is like, if you have ideas that you like, that's great. But the commitment to working on the idea is what makes the joke what it is. And I think I was watching an interview with Seinfeld one time, and he was talking about how like comedians just don't pursue it far enough. Like they don't. So I started taking jokes that worked and just trying to make them bigger and longer, and just sort of free writing around the punchline I already had. And that seemed to be really, it felt really good, because I was like, I could see myself making it. It wasn't just like I had a notebook on me, I was writing down an idea. And also it was just a process. And I think sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes I do that with a joke and I get nothing or very little, or sometimes there's just nothing that comes. But I think trying makes you better, and also you just have to do it. That's our job.
awesome. And do you handwrite then, or do you type stuff?
Oh yeah, so I have one of these. I have a book that's like this size for like when I do my sets. That's another thing I'll do. I'll like listen to a set, and anytime there's a punchline where I feel like there could be a tag, I'll just like pause it and just try to write that tag right there. Or I'll go back and try to write them, and I'll put all my sets in like or not all, but all the ones I try to think of in a notebook like this, and all my like writings, and then my rewriting notebooks are like a little bit smaller, and then I have a tiny notebook that fits in a pocket.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, well, where can people find more about you? Where can they see more of your comedy and stuff like that? I know everything's kind of shut down, but where can they find more stuff about you?
Yeah, so just recently I started doing YouTube videos called The Bright Side, where I take something that people complain about and I try to find the positives of it. And you can just like look up my YouTube page or just type in The Bright Side, Michael Palascak, and that'll come up. And then I have a website, it's michaelpalascak.com, which is hard to spell, but
I'll link
it. Okay, cool. Yeah, so my website in there, and then I have an album and a dry bar special coming out at the end of the month. So
the album and the dry bar special come out at the end of the month?
So the dry bar special, it's called 1984, and it should come out at the end of April, as long as things go as planned. And then the album, we haven't gotten a release date yet, so I'd say sometime in the next couple months.
Awesome. Well, congratulations.
Yeah.
That's amazing, man.
Thanks, man. Thanks.
I appreciate you taking your time out with me, and this is awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Woo! How good was that video, guys, right? I love Michael Palascak. He's like one of my favorite people. I told you I would fanboy out. I told you I did. I told you I would. I wasn't going to lie to you about that. But I learned so much in there. His career has been through so many ups and downs. He learned so much. He grew every step of the way, right? He just got better at comedy, started doing more things, competing more often. And a lot of times, even as he said, it kind of just happened to be the right place at the right time. So one of those things that you need to figure out is, where is that going to be for you? What are you going to do to change your trajectory of your comedy career? Where are you going to go? So I hope that these videos, the interviews, all the stuff that I make it for you helps you guys out. So please like, subscribe, click the bell, get more stuff, and let me help you turn your funny into money. Thanks, guys.